I think architecture is a great profession. Architecture is also a profession that builds on people's hopes and aspirations. It builds on the positive energy of people. Even today, I thank my stars every day that I'm an architect because it's so fulfilling as a discipline, as a profession. You can choose not to look at a work of art, but you can't choose not to look at architecture because it surrounds you. Passion is a word that drew me into thinking, how can architecture be an embodiment of compassion? We try and integrate subjects very consciously and learn how everything is interconnected. These spill out spaces that are strewn all over the campus are great spaces for students to learn from each other. I think I decided around the time I was in 10th grade that architecture might be something that I want to pursue because I was interested in both science and art, and architecture stands between those two disciplines. It's neither fully science and neither fully art. So, in free time, we used to go to the library, look at Architectural Digest, and be mesmerized by the images and the glamour of it. But and I wanted to pursue that. My father wanted me to join IIT and be an engineer because he wanted to and he didn't. So he wanted to fulfill his dream. I sat for the IIT exams, made sure I failed it, and then pursued architecture. And I got into SPA. And even today I thank my stars every day that I'm an architect because it's so fulfilling as a discipline, as a profession, as it's a sheer joy. It's fulfilling because it makes you a better human being. And if I were in control, and I say this often, if I were in control of choosing one curriculum that every person should go through, is architecture, because you become sensitive because you're constantly putting yourself in other person's shoes and thinking, how can I nurture this life, or how can I nurture this function? And so it makes you sensitive, and it sort of builds a respect for the environment and people's desires and aspirations, and you sympathize as an architect. It's not for no reason that it's called the mother of all arts, because it encapsulates everything, it houses everything. You can choose not to look at a work of art, but you can't choose not to look at architecture because it surrounds you. You live in it, you breathe it, you work in it, you fall ill in it, you prosper in it. So there is nothing without architecture. It surrounds life. In college, while I was studying, it was a ritual to go to my Nana's place every summer, and my grandfather was an acharya, he's a Sanskritist, and my mother was a Sanskrit teacher. So there was a lot of kind of traditional stuff at home all the time. And I remember very clearly in my 4th year, my grandfather saying, are you sure you know enough about architecture? You're almost going to be one. And do you know about Agni Kond? Do you know about Ishan Kond? Do you know about Mandala? And I was thinking, what is this? Because we were not even taught this. Forget taught, we were not even exposed to these concepts. And every time we sort of wanted to know, they would kind of dismiss it as some religious mumbo jumbo. You don't need to get into all of this. So it was to get to the bottom of this question, what is it? So that I could answer to my grandfather that, yeah, it's quite interesting. But the thing is, as I started finding out about it, I went deeper and deeper into it. And that took me to a wish to do a PhD in it. And I wanted to do it in India, actually. You see, in School of Architecture, Vastu Shastra was considered as religious text. And in Sanskrit Mahavidyalaya, Vastu Shastra is considered as architecture, nothing to do with Indology. So again, I was in the middle of, Indology and architecture and science and art. I thought the best thing to do is go to a place which can give me access to all these texts. And that is the reason why I applied to do my PhD in London in School of Oriental and African Studies, and I got a Felix Scholarship to do it. And it was just heaven, to see these texts and have them land in front of you, thousands of old years, and it was sheer delight, and I enjoyed those days of my PhD. And that in a way, my first book was about that. It was an overview of what Vastuvidya is and applied today, very, very fragmented, and in a way as a kind of a recipe for urban disenchantment. It's become a sort of, solving problems, and that was never its objective. And Vastuvidya is a codified system of design which was used to design everything before the British came in. And to understand that, one has to understand the chasm in the profession, that there is a before and an after story of architecture. What is institutionalized in India is largely based on the RIBA curriculum. It is based on, how the British designed, and because it was institutionalized, the indigenous systems of design got marginalized and forgotten because it was not in use, and also because architecture is such a capital intensive profession, from materials to, so it really did not have a chance to survive. And so the fragmentation of it you can see in Craftsman and few conservation projects that happen that utilize this. So I had been working with Craftsman during my research, and for restoration of Jal Mahal, I worked with Craftsman to reconstruct the facades, to reconstruct a lot of things that, and what is interesting is when we were doing that, they didn't use drawings at all. It was verbal negotiation of design. Because Vastuvidya is a codified system, you can design a building in conversation, so you don't need plans, sections, elevations if you have a shared knowledge system. In fact, after we had done the design resolution, we would draw the process. So it was very interesting project that way. If you talk to the people who studied with me in SPA in my class, they would have never believed that I'll be an academic. They thought I will be a designer, I'll be designing, because I love to design. And it was only after I went to UK that I thought my, my value is more as an academic than as a practitioner in the UK. So I joined University of Sussex and taught there, and I think because I was getting more and more into academia and writing and teaching, I just grew the value much more there. Having said that, I've always had a project, a small one, or a restoration project, or a tree house that I designed, or a somebody's interior. So I've always had that on the side, but that's not my mainstay. And the value that I've accrued in academia is far greater advantageous than practice. When our president asked me to come and visit GITAM, I was still in NCR, Gurgaon, and I was working there, and I had to look it up. I thought, where is GITAM? I hadn't heard of GITAM University, and I thought what I was looking for was move to a place which has nice landscape, has a a deep context and culture. I was already at the back of my mind looking for that. So I visited GITAM and met the faculty, and I was Vizag is an amazing city, and I think and as a place to study architecture, it's amazing because it is a whole ecosystem. Can you imagine having Buddhist sites just in your backyard, and having temples like Simachalam, and then having a huge variety of colonial architecture still standing and being used, and the ocean and the hills and the flora and fauna, and it is paradise for architecture students or studying architecture. So I was convinced I wanted to give it a shot, and I thought, it would be great to have a place where students can realize what they have around them to study it. When I came back to India in 2004, I was still doing the conservation project, and that was how I came back. And And then I joined Sushant as a visiting faculty, and then I was there for 8 years, and then was the dean. Um, and even in Sussex, I was leading a few things, but to lead an institution like Sushant, I transformed it. I think I like transforming things. I like transforming institutions or an old ruin or an old building, or so that gives me fulfillment. Coming to GITAM School of Architecture, I thought that this could be so beautifully transformed in a surprising way, because what it required was opening out and opening up of the school, and for it to absorb new ideas. And that is what was also happening at the university level. The university has aspirations to be one of the leading universities in the world, and I drew energy from that also, that the whole university is also lifting and opening up, and that in a way gave me courage to begin the transformation. And you can see it's in very demonstrable ways that our admissions are full, we've done a lot of networking, we've done a lot of good work within the community. GITAM School of Architecture, in its vision, in its core values, emphasizes culture, context and compassion. And this in a way mirrors what the university also believes in. Compassion is a word, honesty and ethics and integrity as well, but compassion is a word that drew me into thinking, how can architecture be an embodiment of compassion? Because that is a value that should be measured. And so for the last couple of years, we've been doing a lot of workshops and symposiums, and also the whole design track is framed around compassion as a measurable value. So, and I think that is something that no other school is doing, and addressing the context and culture as part of your design is something that students need to learn, because it is it is also vanishing very fast. And so everything we approach in terms of design, the first thing comes to mind, or the first thing we emphasize is what is its compassion value. Architectural curriculum is basically, by and large, these tracks. There's a technology track, and there's a humanities track, and there's a communication and design track, and there is an electives or specialisms track. These are verticals, and all the subjects that a student learns can be, by and large, be put in these 4 baskets. And then the question was, how do you integrate these 4 baskets, so that when you're studying services, you also do history of plumbing. When you're looking at building construction, joinery, you also look at the history of the brick. Or when you're in a history class, you look at the construction systems, you look at the plumbing, you look at the Mughal dome as a constructed, structured unit, not just of historic value. So we try and integrate subjects very consciously, and learn how everything is interconnected. And this interconnectedness of everything is also something that we do deliberately, that nothing, no idea, no design is in isolation of what surrounds it, and everything you do has an impact. Firstly, I think the city of Vizag, it is located in GITAM University, but also it's in Visakhapatnam, which is a great landscape and a great ecosystem full of historic and historic value. Secondly, it is in GITAM University, which is a place that is very, very student centric. And the value of compassion comes from the university, that it is compassionate in its thinking. We do our best to kind of also apply that compassion, apply that value, not just talk about it in theory or writing or in the vision document. Every action we think about, okay, so how does the student feel about this, and where is the student placed in this decision, or how will it impact the student? So I think that is a very it's a deliberate value that we exercise every day on all the decisions. And I haven't come across our leadership, which is so driven by these human values before, as much as we are in GITAM. In general, awareness of architecture and its role in society is very poor. So, students would automatically choose the safer option. I think it's more parents than students. They would choose engineering or medicine or, the standard. But if you come here, as a school of architecture, which has a bit of everything, but we are in its core a very humanities driven curriculum. So we teach how to be a thinking type of architect, not just doing type of architect. So we question things, we have open debates, we make sure that each student hears his own voice. That is something very special that education can give you, for the student to hear their own mind out aloud with confidence is what we encourage. And this faculty is very accessible. We have great labs, we have great spill out spaces. And I think as a wholesome curriculum, GITAM School of Architecture provides that. And not only that, I mean, I spoke of Vizag as a city where we are situated. We also have a School of Architecture in Hyderabad. And you can imagine how Hyderabad and Vizag are two very different kinds of ecosystems because of their background, because of their history. And in both schools of architecture, we have exchange program where students from there come here and students from here go there, and also faculty exchange program. So actually studying in GITAM School of Architecture exposes you to two ecosystems, and it broadens your network, it broadens your exposure. It broadens, the kind of complexity any society has. So not just, a coastal society, but also, the culture of the Nizams and a society that has grown up there. So what are the complexities of life? That is what the architects need to learn that. Architecture doesn't just happen in classrooms. Actually, it happens more outside than in classrooms, and so there are a lot of spill out spaces in the campus and within reach in next to School of Architecture, where students would chat. We would also have sketching classes, doodling classes, we would have interaction with the faculty. And I think conversation is a great educator and nature is a great teacher as well. So we gravitate towards outdoors, whenever we find opportunity. And also these spill out spaces that are, strewn all over the campus are great spaces for students to learn from each other. And because it's a multidisciplinary campus that, you get in a cafe, maybe law students, business students, architecture students, chatting about different things. And that is a great opportunity for students to learn from each other, because after they graduate, they're going to work with those students. So, and also to grow their own network. This is a fantastic place to do that. And as professionals, they would have known, all these people who were students studying with them are now lawyers, as business people and architects. And so you reach out to people you've studied with, throughout your life. And this is your, core network. To anybody creative who wants to impact human life, architecture is a great profession. Architecture is also a profession that builds on people's hopes and aspirations. It builds on the positive energy of people. Architecture builds on hope. And here is an opportunity for anyone who's an architect to realize people's hopes, to realize people's aspirations, and yet keeping it kind of, sensitive and gentle on the earth and gentle on the climate and gentle on the resources. It's a very special profession in that way, because you're giving wings to people's hopes. So I think it's a great education as well.